Hey, it's Squidly. Here are 6 tips for better winter backpacking trips. Now, here's a little bit of a disclaimer. I live in Alabama, and so you might be thinking, how do I know what to say about winter backpacking if I live in Alabama? Well, in Alabama, we do get winter. The difference is it doesn't get cold and then stay cold, but it does get cold in Alabama. I've been backpacking in certainly the 20s and in the teens Fahrenheit, and I've even been in single digits. So it does get cold, but we have cold snaps. We don't get cold and then it stay cold for weeks at a time. So with that disclaimer aside, let's get on with the tips. The first 2 really are going to be more obvious ones that you would expect to see in a list like this, and then the next 4 will be maybe a little bit less obvious. So the first tip has to do with your sleep system, and pay close attention to the temperature ratings on your top quilt or your sleeping bag. Those temperature ratings can be listed in one of 2 ways, either a comfort rating or a survival rating. In the case of mine, just as an example, I have 2 sleeping bags from Hike and Bike. I really like those bags, but they are listed as survival ratings. And so I have a 0 degree and I have a 15 degree. And those are, again, survival ratings. So the 0 degree survival rating is really a 15 degree comfort, and the 15 degree is a survival rating, and so it's really a 30 degree comfort. It's critical that you pay attention to that, because if I were taking the 0 degree, for example, and it got down into the single digits, I would probably be pretty uncomfortable. The second part of your sleep system, if you're a tent camper, is your sleeping pad, and where you need to pay attention there is in the R value, or the insulation value of your sleeping pad, and the higher that number, the more insulative quality that it has. The second tip is to dress in layers. In the winter, depending on the temperature and your comfort, you're going to have probably 3 different layers. You're going to have a base layer that will probably never leave your skin unless it gets wet either from the environment or sweat. A mid layer that will, again, probably never come off unless it gets wet. And then a heavier layer that would be something that you would have in camp after you've cooled off and at night. The important part of this tip is to not rely on a single heavy layer. That heavy layer is not going to do you much good through the day. It's too heavy to hike in, but probably what you're wearing besides that layer may not be enough for you to stay warm through the day. And so that heavy layer is probably only going to be good for in camp after you've cooled off. In addition to dressing in layers, I'll also add taking extra socks. Through the course of the day, the socks that you're wearing are likely to get wet, either, again, from sweat or from the environment. And so you need, emphasis on need, dry socks at night in order for you to stay warm and comfortable. Now for some of the tips that may not be quite as obvious. Tip number 3 is taking some camp comforts. In winter, the days are shorter, the nights are longer. And so you're going to have, unless you're doing more night hiking, you're going to have more time spent in camp. And so I would suggest that one of the things that is important is to take some things to make your camp experience more comfortable. Just as an example, I take a chair, and when I'm doing winter hiking, I just rely on having that chair in order to make my experience in camp a little bit more comfortable. Also, take something that will help pass the time, especially if you're on a solo trip. As an example, I know that there are people who download movies or TV shows on their phone so that they're able to entertain themselves with that. I like to listen to downloaded podcasts. It just sort of passes a little bit of time, and also it's something to listen to as I drift off to sleep at night. And podcasts don't use hardly any of my phone battery at all. Tip number 4 is taking hot drinks for nighttime before you actually go to bed and intend to go to sleep. One that I like to take is apple cider. And you can get these little powdered apple cider mixes. It makes for a great drink before I go to bed. And occasionally I can even find the sugar-free ones so I can take them and enjoy them. Tip number 5 is a hot water bottle. Now, what can you use as a hot water bottle? Well, I have found that the best option is one of the hard plastic Nalgene bottles. You can boil water and the Nalgene bottle will tolerate boiling water. So you boil that water and now you have something hot that you can keep close to you at night, and it just helps keep you warm. The downside is it adds a little bit of extra weight to your base weight, but on a winter trip, this is just part of it. Like I said, the Nalgene bottle is your best option. I have used the really lightweight aluminum bottle, and I don't have one here, but the lightweight aluminum bottles, the problem is when you put boiling water in that, it gets so hot that you can't touch it. You either have to wrap it up in a sock or you have to wrap it up in a fleece hoodie or something like that in order to be able to keep it anywhere near you, because that thing will burn you. Also, I experimented with putting boiling water into a Smart Water bottle. Yeah, that didn't work. And finally, tip number 6 has to do with a little bit of your mentality going into it. In a winter trip, you can just about give up the idea of being ultralight, because you're taking extra stuff and you're taking heavier stuff. Your sleep system is going to be heavier. Your clothes and your layers, they're going to be heavier. You're taking more of them, and they're going to be, this is not like a summer trip where you can get away with just what you have on and maybe one extra layer in case you get chilled and because you're wet. If you're taking an extra water bottle so that you have a hot water bottle next to you at night in order to stay a little bit warmer, that's just going to add a little bit extra to your base weight. So the idea that you're going to be ultralight in the wintertime when the temperatures are actually colder, maybe not in South Florida, but if they're actually going to be colder temperatures, you're not going to be able to accomplish that, I don't think. At least I don't think you could do it and be comfortable. Okay, that was 6 tips for winter backpacking. In the comments, tell me what I missed and tell me what you would do differently. And on the way out, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.